Hello everyone, and welcome to Legendary Talks, our new talk show that will focus on everything and anything competitive in World of Tanks. I am Adam, your host, but luckily I have with me some experts as well. First and foremost, of course, the map sensei himself, Keyhand.
Hey guys.
But let's also not forget about the battle guru, Phil.
Hey everyone.
There you have it. So we're going to talk about some past tournaments and past events, but of course the talk of the town is the upcoming Onslaught Legends Series. So we will focus on that a lot in today's show. We will also have a look at some of the changes to the Onslaught mode coming in the update that will shatter the current meta and will make even the best players rethink their play styles. So what can we expect from the OLS?
So, this time we'll have a 5-week format instead of just 2 weekends. We'll have 8 teams fighting off each other in first a regular season and then the playoffs. We start with 3 weeks of a round robin. Every team will play against everyone. Then we remove the bottom 2 teams. So we continue with 6 teams and best of 7 matches between those teams. I'm expecting this to ramp up over time. People will develop more into the meta, and then the top 4 teams will play in the playoffs with best of 9 and best of 11 matches.
Nice.
Also, quick reminder, you can still boost the prize pool for that. Basically, there are bundles that you can buy. We even have bundles now that have a special badge in them. So don't forget about that stuff. Also, I think at the time of the release, we should have roughly 50,000 in the prize pool. 50,000 euros, mind you.
Okay.
So teams have a lot to play for.
All right, so it's the big money to play for, but of course the clout as well. You want to be the best of the best, right?
I mean, bragging rights is obviously very important, but I think...
You can't buy those.
No, you cannot buy those, but you can buy a lot of other goodies with the money. That's up for grabs.
That's true. But we also now have the 8 teams locked in that will be competing. Who are they, and how did they get here?
Yeah, I think your favorite team, we can mention it first. Storm made it. They won the 3rd Onslaught Legends Cup in August. Based on the performance of the previous tournament as well in May, the top 4 teams made it immediately into the OLS. As I mentioned, Storm is the first one. Next we have Cashback, a team mostly from Ukraine. And then we have Hidden Run, our last year WCI champions. And Mafia, the team that won our first Onslaught Legends Cup.
And together with that, we also have other teams that are sometimes not so known. Some of them have even been formed pretty recently. For example, Solyanka. Then we also have Clueless. They definitely have the cutest logo.
Yes.
So,
So cool.
I think they are some of your favorites as well. But I still have doubts as to how far they actually will be able to make it.
You have little faith. But we also will have the Onslaught Legends finals between the 4 best American teams, right? How will that look?
So for the North American finals, we basically have 2 semifinals, immediately starting it off with best of 9. In the first semifinal, our WCI representative from North America, Dopamine, is facing their opponent, which is Escalate. They picked them immediately. I mean, they're very confident in what they're doing. And I think this is also one of the matches that we expect to be more one-sided. Escalate has been a decent top team in the previous attack-defense format, but hasn't really found their footing for Onslaught. And then in the second semi-final, we have the team of Stacked versus the team of Smile. Both teams that have been smiling a lot because their placements were very good. I think this will be bite on bite, very close, and we'll have to see who turns out to be the winner, because on the final day, keep it in mind in your calendar, 13th of October, we will find out who will take the crown.
Oh, very good, very good. But now, let's focus a bit more on the main characters of OLS, the teams. So first off, we have Storm, right? A bit of a surprise performance from them in the last tournament. Some predicted it, some didn't, but...
I think it's fair to say that probably everyone except people in the team didn't predict it. It was kind of a miracle run. Then again, they were looking very convincing. The question is, can they repeat this once again? Because some time has passed. We are going to touch on it later. There will be not only changes to crew skills, but also to maps. And all of that is going to influence the meta. So how will teams be able to adapt is the biggest question.
But we also have Cashback, who are now seeded as the second ones to go to the World of Tanks Champion International, right? How did they manage to do that?
So Cashback overall has since the introduction of the Onslaught mode, been always at the top. They have failed to win the first, but dominated the second tournament. Now have been the second place again in the third tournament. I think they're the most consistent top team right now. And for me, they are kind of the favorites to take it all if they stay on the level that they have been showing before.
Okay, that's big talk, big talk. Do you agree, Guy?
I do agree. They have been absolutely consistent, and consistency is something that we're missing with the other teams, actually. For example, Hit and Run, there were huge expectations on their shoulders, especially after winning WCI past year in November 2023. They didn't manage to even qualify for that event, so that just shows that some teams are actually struggling to adapt.
So you think that Hit and Run now have dropped from the favorites list?
I think they have high highs and low lows recently. So we have seen them dominating the North American competition in the Independence Day show match. So 5-0 against Dopamine, who then wrapped up the complete NA bracket for a second time and won both cups there. But as we said earlier, they haven't been able to dominate in the regional EU competition during the August tournament. So we'll have to see how they will do.
All right. But we also have Mafia, which is a Polish powerhouse. What can we expect from them?
Difficult one to answer once again. Mafia, I think they have been underperforming in the OLC number 3, which was the first tournament during which you could qualify for WCI. But I think they have been outperforming themselves absolutely in the Onslaught Legends Series qualifier, which happened just one weekend later. Okay. So it is really, really hard to predict right now. But hopefully for all of those teams, they will have something cool prepared for us.
Right. We also have W, which is one of the few international teams that we have on the roster, and the only one that has a German in it. How's that possible?
Actually, we have a second German player now.
Oh.
I mean, obviously, with two of us being here, we also need two players in the league. So yeah, W has Jackifa, our all favorite redline camper, and Conquest, the second of the supposedly stronger international teams, has Lemmy, who is also a German player. A bunch of Hungarian players originally founded Conquest, and then now it's more of an international mix. But you brought up W, and I think W is a bit of a dark horse. They have great player skill, I think, and they have also a lot of motivation to practice, to improve, to innovate. So they haven't really peaked to their limits, but I think they're definitely a candidate for the top 4.
Okay. And we also have Solyanka, which is a bit of a Ukrainian mix. But a bit of a mystery right now, no?
It is a fairly recently formed team as well, so they haven't had that many performances yet. They haven't really had that many shows actually in our tournaments, so we haven't really seen a lot from them. But I mean, player skill in that team as well, absolutely off the chart.
Well, it has to be in OLS, right? Yeah.
Indeed, but we'll have to see if they are actually able to make it work, or if the experience that the other teams, for example, Hit and Run, that they have, if that is something they can beat, or if they won't be able to overcome it.
Because that's the thing, I think that we do say someone is a dark horse, someone's not, but these are the top of the tops. These are the creme de la creme of World of Tanks competitive scene, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Key was talking about the previous experience. The team all around Solyanka, there's like a core of them that even won back 2 years ago in the VOD 7 series under the name GDVV1. Top Ukrainian team, the only Ukrainian team to ever win a VOD 7 tournament. And later they appeared under different branding as Scarlet Flower in the first tournament. So yeah, their leadership with Saisa and Victor, they definitely know what they're doing. So we shouldn't count them out too early.
Okay. And you already mentioned Conquest. They have a very ambitious name. Will they live up to it?
We'll have to wait and see. Conquest, we already talked about it. Originally Hungarian, so that does kind of limit the player pool. And that is, I think, part of the decision to go international. So now the main communication language for them is going to be English. But also for them, it's kind of, they haven't really had the deep tournament runs in the past, despite having a really cool name. But I think now that they actually qualified for OLS, which is for them already, I think, an achievement, they will want more.
All right. So a lot to fight for there for them. And finally, Clueless. They have the cutest logo. So was it really a good idea to include them, since they will obviously win the whole league?
I mean, You know how they say, right? Cat has 7 lives. There's 7 match days in the first phase.
Okay.
So we'll have to see how many of those lives will be used up. But I think, as you said earlier, either way, all of those teams that made it here, they're the best teams in Europe. Even if you're at the bottom of the pack, you have already achieved quite a lot. And you only have to make it into the top 6 to just survive for 5 more playing days, get a lot of experience, training, get in those games. And I think especially in the long run, for the future and for potential future seasons, they will have a good advantage.
All right. Okay, I'm looking forward to them. I think they'll do well. I think they will surprise. So we've got all these teams, but what are your expectations? What are your top 3? What do you think will be the first, second, and third team?
Wow. That is a very good question.
I want your
actually,
predictions.
Adam.
Let's go.
All right, so right now it's more than 10 days still until the league, but I'm gonna go with actually Cashback probably being first.
Okay.
And then it will be a close second run in between Hit and Run and Storm.
All right. What about you, Phil?
Yeah, to be honest, like when we were talking about who makes the top 4, who makes the playoffs, I have 5 teams that I think are right now supposedly the strongest. That's the 3 Polish teams with Mafia, Storm, and Hit and Run. And then I would say Cashback is kind of undisputed into that discussion. And I think W has the potential of really mixing it up there. And if I have to sort out some teams, I think Storm, so far they only had 1 good tournament day. So you remember the Westfield games where we were thinking, maybe that's their time, but then Hit and Run won in the upper bracket against them in the OLC 3.
Yeah.
So I would sort out Storm, only put them in like the 5-6 category, and maybe my top 3 would be something like Cashback, Mafia, and Hit, or maybe W, but we'll have to see how they perform. And yeah, if W can overcome their demons, because so far they haven't made any final in the last tournaments.
Well, for me, I obviously think that Storm will be the top dog, because that's what I predicted in the last tournament. I was proven right. And also, I do think they do have this problem. As you said, they fluctuate. They sometimes have a bad day, sometimes they have a good day. Let's see if they can fluctuate up and stay there and not have too many of those bad days. And then I do think they have a good chance. Second, I really like the playstyle of Cashback, so I do think that they could get up there. And finally, Clueless. Obviously, they'll be up there because they're just amazing. So yeah, those are my predictions anyway.
I mean, as I said, as soon as we are starting off the series, we only have best of 5s for the first 7 playdays. So definitely the potential for big upsets is there in every single match that we will see. So big opportunities for the smaller teams, or the not so favored teams, to take some points here and there and stay alive.
So while we are looking into the future, we already had some very good events in the past. So, do you have any highlights, any favorite moments from those games that we had in the qualifiers and the tournaments?
So I think one of the very memorizable moments was the train that we had on Westfield. There were multiple tanks that ended up somehow building a row, and then 2 tanks at the end were standing, 2 Chinese heavy tanks, facing it off in the hull down, trying to block the shots with their guns. And I think Pan's Fury was the winner of that match, and it was definitely a highlight for a lot of players. Yeah. This is really where we can see the individual skill of the players. And yeah, a lot of back and forth and a lot of close matches. I have to also give a shout out to the A matches, because I was up there staying up whole night, watching, being excited about it. And then we had Dopamine versus Smile in the finals. Smile being up 4-2, and then 4-3, 4-4, and the tiebreaker. Dopamine took it all. A big shout out to the Studzianki round of hockey. He was playing in the 430U and racked up nearly 9,000 damage there. A really big performance, using the double bush mechanics correctly. So definitely something to rewatch. And Kai, any highlights for you?
I mean, for me, every single round on Cliff per se is a highlight, just because it's so action-packed.
Really?
I also,
Okay.
by the way, I also want to give a shout-out towards a North American match. You may not like it, but the WZ 132-1, so the Chinese Tier 10 light tank, is currently undefeated, 100% playoff win rate.
Okay, that's brutal. Let's see if he can keep that in the OLS as well. But we also have update 1.26. And we have map changes and a change to the map pool. So, talk us through that.
Yeah, let's start with what hasn't changed. I think that's the easiest thing to start. So, alphabetically, we start with Airfield. Airfield has not received any changes. Obviously, the meta will change with all the stuff that is still to come. But yeah, Cliff, Studzianki, and Westfield with only minor changes. Then obviously we have a bit bigger changes on El Haluf. Kai was running through us that earlier that there's the ramp now that you can access the points immediately. Then we have Ensk with a minor change, but still significant towards the northern base where the tank destroyers are positioned. And Murovanka, our first completely new map in the pool. What are your thoughts?
Well, because we removed Glacier, right? And now we're adding Murovanka.
Yes. So the total pool will stay at 9 maps. Obviously, new map in the pool is going to shake things up. Murovanka kind of open. We'll have to see how the meta actually develops. I think a lot of the more underdog teams are possibly going to try and pick it and first pick it even against good teams because they hope to surprise those. However, obviously the good teams will possibly even just start permabanning the map to not have to deal with it. That being said, one more change we didn't mention yet is Pilsen will actually on the open side get another airstrike. So that's going to remove a lot of pressure off of teams that were playing the open already, and it's going to make capping strategies actually a bit more difficult.
Okay. But not only maps, we also have changes to the abilities and some onslaught balancing. So what's changed there?
So let's start with the easy things to understand. First of all, no engine fires anymore, right?
Okay.
So overall, the damage to modules was halved, so only 50%. We should have a bit less ammo racks. I know it's a cool thing, but if it happens less often, the individual
It's
times
even
are
cooler.
more explosive. Then we'll have no engine fire. We'll have only 12% RNG upwards and downwards, so the damage spread is being decreased. And we have a couple of changes to the light tanks and the spotting. Kai, run us through that.
Yeah, so first of all, it is about the tracked light tanks and basically the plane at the start that you have that a lot of teams use to generate info and thus negate basically the fog of war that is in the mode. This one will have at the start, it will have a cooldown of 3 seconds. This means that you won't be able to reliably hit all tanks with it at the start. This means we will probably see a decrease in light tank usage. Keep in mind that also in 1.26 the Tessak is gonna come in. We don't know how often that one is going to get picked, and there are crew skills as well. I mean, 1.26 is the absolute patch of the year, and this obviously has big implications for Onslaught as well.
Let's talk about the Czech light tanks because I'm really looking forward to those. Those are exciting. And now you did say there'll be less light tanks, but still, will someone pick the Tessak, maybe even to surprise? The same with Murovanka.
So for me personally, I am thinking that one of the biggest issues with this tank compared to random battles is that this close combat fighting with only 7 vehicles will kind of require the light always to also take a damage dealer role.
Yeah.
More of a supportive role, but if you've seen the previous matches, we had a lot of high damage numbers by the RHM, and that tank really has a strong gun that can fire into the sides of tanks, maybe even penetrate a heavy tank here and there, and the low penetration of the Tessak might struggle to contribute in the same way. But on the other hand, if you get the sight of an RHM and you load in your HE clip, then and you're one light down, right?
That's what I want to see. Those are the scenes that I'm going to be sit there and looking forward to. So yeah, I do hope someone does pick the Tessak because it's an exciting new tank. But during the rebalance also, we had some buffs to the Backchat and the K91 and the Pattern. Now, except for the Backchat who has been picked by Hit and Run in the past, right? None of these other tanks were used very much. So do you think we'll see more of them?
It's hard to say.
You say that all the time, it's hard to say.
We aren't even there yet. But yeah, it is definitely hard to say. I think the K91 might be actually the most interesting out of the pack because the DPM is now absolutely crazy. It's you just melt through the enemy tanks. The thing is, it doesn't really contribute a lot in HP. It doesn't really have that much armor. And those are two things that you definitely need in the shootouts. M48 pattern, I don't think we're realistically going to see. I think the Centurion just does the same thing, but better. And also, new tanks are now allowed with, for example, M60 and all of that kind of stuff. So maybe an M48, but with a different flavor, we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think the 121B has a good chance of being picked. It has a very good combination of the improved Inspire ability, which gives a big boost to all of the tanks, then a great gun, good penetration, still very good maneuverability, and the tank has also this option of being left on one side for a moment, taking a bush. It has 420 meters base view range and a decent camo value of around 15, so it can stay there, cover one flank, and then is fast enough to join the other tanks. One thing that we haven't really touched on is the overall change of HPs that should put everything a bit closer. You remember we had the plus 25%, which obviously profited the heavy tanks the most, that they have the most base HP. But now with the plus 650 for all vehicles, medium tanks should have an easier time competing and being used, especially with the buffs towards the Inspire ability and the option of, for instance, on maps like Westfield or on maps like Ghost Town to get a flank and attack the heavy from the side.
All right. So just to explain as well why you mentioned some of those tanks we haven't seen before, this is because Onslaught is no longer limited to tech tree tanks, right?
Exactly.
So those are the ones like 121B that we might now be seeing.
We also have a couple of more special tanks. We have the Foch 155.
Yeah.
I mean, the Foch 155 is basically same chassis as we already know from the fairly popular Foch B. We have seen great clips, like 6 shots in a row, completely deleting a tank. But this tank has a very long intra-clip reload, and the gun, while through the Onslaught combat modifiers, will be a bit easier to handle. It still has a very long intra-clip reload, and then you wait until the whole clip is reloaded. I'm not sure if that tank is really viable. And the same opinion is kind of for the Object 268 version 5. Kai, do you have any other opinions on that one, especially compared to tanks like a Hori or a Bliskavice?
The thing is, Bliska, obviously, with its brutal DPM, is just there when you need it to. Talking about TDs, by the way, also one ability is getting reworked, and that is basically the reload reduction that some brawling TDs used to get. Basically, that gets converted now because of the Tessak, actually. It gets changed, and now it is you actually do take less damage, but you don't really get reload reduction for every single hit that you take. So that is going to change up the meta, especially on Ents, in my opinion, because that is where we saw a lot of those brawling TDs getting picked. And I think a lot of teams are going to have to rethink how they play the map as well.
So that means that the only tank that's going to be doing Ratata is the Tesla.
If it gets picked.
If it gets picked, yes. But now, let's also have a look even further into the future, because we're going to have the WCI coming up with 6 international teams. Now, that's going to be exciting. What are your expectations there?
Last year, the WCI was an absolute blast.
Yeah.
Both Kai and I have been there in Shanghai. It was amazing. And yeah, the first teams were already picked. So we have the Chinese teams that were qualified immediately through the WCL. That's the Chinese first league. In the summer split, we had the team XY Hong. You might remember their logo with a big sun in the middle from last year's Winter Invitational. They surprisingly won that season and dominated in the finals over the big favorite Falcon.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, Kai's favorite team, Mori-Chan, for a second time now qualified to represent the APAC region. What are your expectations on that team?
I mean, first of all, it has to be said, Triple MC, as we can also call them, are so far the only team to qualify for both last year's WCI and this year's WCI. That means on their own server, they are the undefeated champions, I think for some time now, very stable. However, if we take a look at last year's WCI, actually, they didn't have the best of tournament runs. And they will have to surprise me very positively if they are going to be faring actually better this year. That being said, we do obviously have the NA representatives locked in now, and those were some really crazy matches for their qualification. And now we also obviously have Storm as kind of a surprise, but I think a pretty positive one to everyone. Plus cashback, it's going to be absolutely stacked at WCI, and personally, I cannot wait to get back there.
So, talk us through a bit the WCI composition. How do we get to these teams?
Well, earlier already we talked about the EU and NA representatives. We have Dopamine dominating the NA region. We have Storm, a bit of a surprise, taking us all, and Cashback as the third team from the Western region. Kai already mentioned Mori-Chan, our favorite name. is again the reoccurring WCI representative for APAC. And then we have XY Hong, the team with a big sun in the middle, showing us our first international appearance last year in December. And yeah, they qualified through the summer season of the WCL. That's the first Chinese league. They had a bit of a rough start into that, but then made it through the lower brackets, kicking out Falcons. You remember them? They played against Hit and Run, won in the upper bracket, put them into the lower bracket, big upset. So yeah, Falcon will definitely be one of the contenders for the last spot, and that last spot is still to be determined. The Chinese autumn split has started already, so there will be multiple weeks of competition, and the winner of this will be our 6th team at WCI November in Chengdu.
Okay, so that's the spot to watch.
Exactly.
Right, so now let's have a look at the matches of week 1. So the Onslaught Legends Series will kick off on Tuesday the 10th of September at 16 UTC with Hit and Run facing Solyanka. Then we will have Cashback against Conquest, and Mafia will be facing off with W. And finally, Storm and Clueless. So, what do you think of these first 4 matches? Which one are you looking forward to most?
Yeah, so I think the biggest question all about is who will struggle at the beginning and who will get the initial momentum, maybe pick up a 2-0. And looking at Storm's schedule, I think you're on a very good track there, Adam. Storm has like fairly good early opponents, first facing Clueless, and in the second week, you haven't mentioned it yet, but they will face Solyanka. Solyanka has shown highs, but there's still a bit of a question mark, so maybe Storm can pick up the initial momentum. And then we have those fierce competition, Mafia versus W. I think this will be very interesting.
What about you, Keith?
Well, I think also the third match of the day that Phil just mentioned is going to be the cracker to watch out for. That being said, the first 2 are also kind of dicey. Hit and Run is going to start off the day, and there it will once again be the question, are they able to deliver what we've come to expect from them, or will they not live up to expectations? I think the first match day will also be very important in terms of, you know, setting the mood in the teams in like for the coming weeks. And also we'll have some really special Twitch drops prepared, so don't miss out on those.
Well, tell us about them. What can we expect?
So first of all, and that is going to be very, very interesting for a lot of probably newer players, we will have rental Onslaught tanks for all of you that probably don't have the biggest of selections of tanks to play in Onslaught right now. And the biggest thing, of course, there will be a dedicated Twitch drops token store running through the whole of OLS. So even if you miss a stream or 2, you can still collect all of those other tokens and then spend them in the store for even premium tanks, for example. That being said, I don't want to spoil it too much, but the drops on October 13th, so for the grand finals, are absolutely crazy.
Right, and let's repeat one more time the cool 2D style that's going to be still on sale, and that will be upgrading that prize pool. I just mentioned it.
Yes, indeed. So right now the prize pool for us is around 45,000 euros. I expect that to be at the release of the video, maybe 50,000, but obviously you can still raise it by buying the Onslaught bundles. And in those you will find the Among the First 2D style that is pretty cool, among the first, so to speak, in the 2D style section in the game. And also, if you buy the biggest bundle, you're automatically gonna get a badge as well, and that one looks cool.
Yeah, you gotta have that badge.
Yeah, I think we all appreciate really all the support that the viewers, the fans, they're cheering for their teams, giving support, and I think making this whole thing what it can be and what it is. I think overall sports, like everyone knows this feeling of being in a big stadium, people cheering, people being passionate about it, and I think without the fans, it's just half the fun, right?
Oh, definitely. I think the fans make it, but of course also the teams. And we've got some stellar teams with some very good players in them, and ones that are going to now be making themselves into legends, if you'll pardon me that pun. But it was very much intended. So yes, that's it pretty much for us today. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to check our portal, to check on that schedule, to see when your favorite team is playing. And remember, keep it legendary.